Donald Trump just made a shocking offer to Africa. And honestly, 10 countries said no in the most explosive way possible. This is a political earthquake, and yeah, it's about to change everything. Why did these nations reject Trump's deal? What's really behind this historic standoff? And what does this mean for the future of US-Africa relations? Buckle up, because this story is wild, and you won't believe what happens next. Trump's offer was supposed to be a game changer, billions in aid, military support, and trade deals. But instead of rolling out the red carpet, these 10 African nations stood their ground and said hell no. Was it pride, principle, or maybe something much darker? We're counting down all 10 countries, revealing the real reasons behind their explosive rejections, and trust me, number 7 will leave you speechless. Some of these nations just made the riskiest move of their history, because saying no to Trump could mean economic warfare, sanctions, or even military consequences. But they did it anyway. Why? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's at stake, and why this could be the beginning of a new Cold War. Number 10. Ghana. We don't need your strings attached. In recent years, Ghana has emerged as a symbol of African pride and independence, refusing to bow to foreign pressure, no matter how tempting the offer. When Trump's administration offered Ghana a staggering $500 million in military aid, it wasn't just a generous gesture. Hidden beneath the surface were strict conditions. Ghana would have to sever its growing relationship with China, and even more controversially, hand over control of its most strategic ports to U.S. forces. This was not just about aid, it was about influence and power. Ghana's response? Absolutely not. The nation's leaders stood united, making it clear that their sovereignty was not for sale, no matter the price tag. The breaking point came when the deal demanded the establishment of U.S. military bases on Ghanaian soil. This would have effectively turned Ghana into a strategic outpost for the U.S. in its global rivalry with China, putting Ghana right in the middle of a superpower tug-of-war. Ghana's leaders didn't mince words. They called the proposal a form of modern-day colonialism, a blatant attempt to undermine their independence and betray their partnership with Beijing. The message was clear. Ghana would not be bullied or bought. The U.S. didn't take the rejection lightly. In retaliation, they canceled visa-free travel for Ghanaian officials, a move widely seen as a diplomatic slap in the face and a warning to other African nations considering similar defiance. Why does this matter? Ghana now stands at a crossroads, caught between the immense pressure from the U.S. and the promise of investment from China. The stakes are high, not just for Ghana, but for the entire continent. Their bold rejection is a powerful signal that Africa is no longer content to beg for Western scraps. Instead, countries like Ghana are demanding respect, partnership, and a seat at the table, on their own terms. This is a new era of African agency. Number 9. Nigeria. Keep your oil deals, we'll keep our sovereignty. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and its largest oil producer, has also found itself in the crosshairs of U.S. interests. The U.S. dangled a lucrative energy deal in front of Nigeria, promising billions in investment and technology. But as always, there was a catch. Trump's administration wanted U.S. corporations to control a staggering 51% of Nigeria's oil reserves. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a bid for control over the country's most valuable resource. Nigeria's response? Over our dead bodies. The proposal sparked outrage across the country, with leaders and citizens alike rejecting what they saw as a blatant attempt at economic domination. The shocking demand was clear. The U.S. wanted majority stakes in Nigeria's oil sector, essentially seeking to own and control the nation's biggest source of wealth. For many Nigerians, this was a red line that could not be crossed. In exchange, the U.S. offered only vague promises of infrastructure projects, roads, bridges, maybe a few schools, but with no real profit sharing or guarantees for the Nigerian people. It was a deal that benefited the U.S. far more than Nigeria. Nigeria's president didn't hesitate to call it what it was: economic slavery. Instead of caving to U.S. demands, Nigeria turned to Russia, seeking new partnerships that respected their sovereignty and offered fairer terms. The fallout was immediate. The U.S. threatened sanctions, hoping to force Nigeria back to the negotiating table. But Nigeria stood firm, refusing to be intimidated or coerced. This standoff could reshape global oil markets, and it's a clear sign that Africa is done being exploited. The continent's largest nations are charting their own course, demanding respect, and proving that the era of Western dominance is coming to an end. Number 8. South Africa. We remember what happened last time. This is a story of bold defiance, high-stakes diplomacy, and the price of standing up to a superpower. South Africa, a nation with a long history of resistance, found itself at the center of a global tug-of-war. South Africa was offered billions in trade incentives, but only if they abandoned BRICS, the alliance with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The US hoped to isolate South Africa from its emerging partners, promising lucrative deals and economic perks in exchange for loyalty. Their response? We're not your puppets. South African leaders, backed by a wave of public support, made it clear they would not be pressured or bought. The streets echoed with chants for sovereignty and independence as citizens rallied behind their government's decision. The ultimatum: Trump's team warned South Africa, leave BRICS or lose US investment. The message was blunt: choose America or face economic consequences. Behind closed doors, the pressure was intense, with US diplomats making it clear that the stakes were higher than ever. South Africa's leaders laughed it off, calling the threat pathetic. They saw the ultimatum as an insult to their nation's dignity and a challenge to their right to choose their own allies. The government's defiant stance became a rallying cry for many across the continent. The US then slapped tariffs on South African goods, triggering a massive backlash. The move hurt businesses and workers, but it also fueled a sense of unity and resistance. Protests erupted, and South Africa doubled down on its commitment to BRICS, refusing to bow to economic blackmail. Why its historic South Africa is choosing global alliances over American bullying, and setting a dangerous precedent for US influence. By standing firm, South Africa inspired other nations to reconsider their own relationships with the West, signaling a shift in the global balance of power. Number 7, Ethiopia, we won't be your military base. Ethiopia, too, faced pressure from the US, but chose to assert its independence and protect its sovereignty. Trump wanted Ethiopia to host a massive US drone base to fight terrorism. The proposal promised security cooperation and financial aid, but at a steep cost to Ethiopia's autonomy. Ethiopia's response: we'll handle our own security. The government made it clear that foreign military bases were not welcome, and that Ethiopia would not be used as a pawn in global power games. The hidden agenda: the US wanted unrestricted access to Ethiopian airspace, essentially turning the country into a launchpad for US strikes. Ethiopia's refusal sent a powerful message: African nations are no longer willing to sacrifice their sovereignty for foreign interests. Ethiopia refused, fearing it would make them a target for retaliation. The United States responded by cutting military aid, but Ethiopia stood firm. The bigger picture here is that Ethiopia's defiance proves Africa is tired of being used as a battleground for foreign wars. Now let's talk about Kenya. Trump offered Kenya $3 billion in loans, but with brutal conditions. Privatize all highways, ports, and railways, basically handing them over to American firms, and allow American courts to override Kenyan laws in business disputes. Kenya's response: this is worse than colonialism. The fallout? Kenya walked away, choosing Chinese loans with better terms. Why is this a game changer? Well, Kenya just proved that Africa has options, and America isn't the only player anymore. Alright, this is your moment to weigh in. What do you think about these countries standing up to Trump? Was it brave or suicidal? Tanzania, we refuse to be your testing ground. Trump's administration offered Tanzania a lucrative vaccine deal, millions of doses and cutting-edge medical technology. But there was a shocking catch. Tanzania would have to allow experimental drug trials on its population with limited oversight. President Samia Suluhu Hassan's response: we are not guinea pigs. Algeria made their stance crystal clear: we won't spy on our neighbors for you. The United States came in, offering Algeria some advanced surveillance technology and counterterrorism support. But there was a catch. They wanted Algeria to monitor and report on Libya, Mali, and Niger. Algeria's response: we are not your informants. Senegal pushed back, saying, keep your fake democracy promises. The people of Senegal, along with their leaders, were not willing to accept outside interference disguised as support. They saw through the rhetoric and recognized the deeper motives at play, refusing to be pawns in a global power game. Trump's team dangled so-called democracy aid, funding for elections and civil society groups. On the surface, it looked like a generous offer to help strengthen democratic institutions. But beneath the surface, there were strings attached, and many Senegalese activists and politicians grew suspicious of the true intentions behind this aid. But then, well, leaked documents revealed the real agenda. The United States wanted to install a pro-Western leader in the next election. These documents exposed secret communications and plans, showing that the so-called support was actually a calculated move to influence the outcome of Senegal's political future. Senegal's government didn't stay quiet. They leaked the papers and publicly shamed the United States. By bringing the evidence to light, they made it clear to their citizens and the world that they would not tolerate covert manipulation or foreign meddling in their democratic process. The regime change plot was exposed. The deal actually included secret funding for opposition groups, all to undermine the current government. This revelation sparked outrage across Senegal, with civil society groups and ordinary citizens demanding accountability and transparency from both their own leaders and foreign actors. When confronted, U.S. officials brushed it off, saying it was just standard democracy promotion. They insisted their actions were above board, but the damage was already done, trust had been broken, and their explanations rang hollow to many observers. But Senegal wasn't having it. The people took to the streets, their voices unified in protest, demanding respect for their sovereignty and the right to determine their own future without outside interference. In a bold move, Senegal expelled 2 American diplomats and banned USAID programs suspected of interference. This decisive action sent a clear message. Senegal would defend its democracy no matter the cost, and would not allow foreign powers to dictate its destiny. Angola stood firm, declaring, "We're done with your empty promises." The United States promised Angola billions in infrastructure investments, but only if they dropped all trade deals with China. Angola's president, João Lourenço, just laughed and said, "Show us the money first." When the United States couldn't guarantee the funds, Angola simply walked away. The so-called investment turned out to be nothing more than loans with crippling interest rates, and the U.S. wanted Angola to cut China out of key mining and oil projects. Angola called their bluff and instead signed new deals with Beijing. Egypt. We don't answer to you. Trump's biggest shock came when Egypt, America's top ally in Africa, rejected a new military pact. The deal required Egypt to publicly support Israel's West Bank annexation, something even Trump's own advisors called political suicide. The unthinkable betrayal. The United States threatened to cut $1.3 billion in annual military aid if Egypt refused. Egypt's President Sisi didn't blink. He told Trump, "We are not for sale." The United States backed down, proving even loyal allies have limits. Why this changes everything? If Egypt can defy the U.S., any country can. This is the beginning of a new era, where Africa dictates its own future. This is the turning point in history. Africa is rising up and the world is scrambling to react. What side are you on? Do you think these countries made the right call? Or are they risking economic disaster? Sound off in the comments, we're reading every response. Here's what you must do now. Like this video, if you believe Africa should stand up to foreign pressure. Subscribe, because this battle is far from over and you need to see what happens next. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to wake up about what's really happening. Turn on notifications. We're tracking live developments and you won't want to miss a second. The United States thought it could bully Africa into submission, but these 10 nations just proved the game has changed. Who's next to defy the West? Stay tuned, because the revolution is just getting started. Don't just watch, join the fight. Drop a comment, spread the truth, and let's show the world that Africa answers to no one.